Half of all Australians have less money saved than they think they do. Not because they're bad with money, but because the number everyone quotes is quietly lying to them. And once you see why, you can't unsee it. Here's what I mean. The average Australian super balance is about $172,000. Sounds alright, doesn't it? Except barely anyone actually has that. Because averages get dragged upward by a small number of very wealthy people. The typical Aussie, the one right in the middle, is sitting on far less. That single distinction changes the whole picture of how Australians are really doing, so today we're doing this properly. 6 age groups, what Australians actually have, and what you genuinely should have to be on track. Real data, real targets, no sugarcoating and no scare tactics. Find your age, be honest with yourself, and stick around to the end, because the gap between those two numbers is fixable at every single age. Nobody's too far gone here, and I'll show you the levers that still work. Let's start with 18 to 24. If you're here, you've got the single most valuable asset in finance, and it isn't money. It's time. Every year at this age is worth more than a year at any other age, and most people waste it. Right now, the typical Australian in this bracket has under $15,000 in super, and often only a few thousand in the bank. That's completely normal. Nobody expects you to have wealth at 22, so don't measure yourself against people twice your age. What you should aim for at this age isn't a big balance. It's a small emergency fund, about $2,000 to $3,000 in cash, so one flat tire doesn't become a credit card. That buffer alone puts you ahead of an enormous number of Australians. Then start putting away even $50 a week. At this age, $50 a week can genuinely become hundreds of thousands by retirement. Time does the heavy lifting. You will never again get returns this cheap because you're paying with time instead of money. Also, consolidate your super into one fund. Multiple accounts means multiple fees quietly eating the balance you're trying to grow. It takes 20 minutes once, and it pays you for the next 40 years. Now 25 to 34. This is where real income arrives, and where most Australians quietly fall behind without noticing. The salary arrives, the lifestyle expands, and the savings rate somehow stays exactly the same. The average super balance at 25 is about $24,000, and by 35 it's around $81,000. But here's the trap. Your income goes up and your spending goes up with it. Better car, nicer rent, more takeaway. That's lifestyle creep, and it's brutal. What you should have by 35 is roughly 1 year's salary saved across super and investments combined, plus 3 months of expenses in cash. If you're behind here, don't panic. You still have 30 years of compounding ahead of you, and that is an enormous amount of runway. Being behind at 30 is a very different thing to being behind at 60. 35 to 44, mortgage, maybe kids, and the most expensive decade of most people's lives. This is where saving gets genuinely hard. If you feel stretched in this decade, you're not doing anything wrong. Average super at 40 to 44 is about $140,000 for men and $109,000 for women. That gender gap is real and it persists. But to actually be on track for a comfortable retirement, you'd want closer to $178,000 by age 40. See the gap? The average Australian is already behind the target by their early 40s, and most of them have no idea it's happening. It's not dramatic, it's just quiet, and quiet problems are the ones that compound. Your move here is boring but powerful. Salary sacrifice even a little extra into super and keep 6 months of expenses in cash for the family. Small, automatic and boring beats big, occasional and heroic every single time. 45 to 54. Peak earning years in the last decade where compounding still has serious time to work for you. 20 years is still plenty of runway if you use it deliberately. Average super at 50 to 54 is around $254,000 for men and $190,000 for women. The on-track target at 50 is about $313,000. So again, the average Aussie is sitting meaningfully behind where they need to be, and the further behind you start this decade, the harder the next one has to work. The good news is this is the decade where catch-up contributions exist. If you've had years with unused super caps, you can often use them now. It's one of the most underused rules in the entire Australian system. And if the mortgage is nearly gone, every dollar that was going to the bank can now go to your future instead. That switch is powerful. Redirecting a mortgage payment into super can transform a balance in just a few years, 55 to 64. This is the decade where the maths gets very real and where the honest numbers surprise people the most. This is the decade where hoping it works out stops being a strategy. The average super balance at 60 to 64 is about $395,000 for men and $313,000 for women. But here's the number nobody quotes. The median balance at that age is closer to $160,000. Half of Australians have less than that. Read that again. because it's the single most important number in this entire video. And a comfortable retirement needs around 630,000 for a single person, 730,000 for a couple. That gap is confronting, but it isn't hopeless. This is the decade for maximum contributions, downsizing options, and getting real advice about the plan. A proper plan at 58 is worth more than guesswork at 68. And finally, 65 and over. The average balance at 65 to 69 is about 448,000 for men and 392,000 for women. A comfortable retirement costs roughly $54,000 a year for a single person or $77,000 for a couple. And the full age pension for a single person is only around $29,000 a year. That's the safety net, and it's a modest one, which is exactly why the gap between what people have and what they need matters so much. The pension keeps you afloat. Your savings decide the lifestyle. One keeps the lights on, the other decides whether you actually enjoy the years you worked for. If you're here and behind, the levers are different, but they still exist. Downsizing part-time work and making sure your money is invested properly, not sitting idle. Even in retirement, your money should still be working, just more carefully than before. So let's be honest about the big picture. At almost every age, the average Australian is behind the benchmark and the median Australian is further behind again. That's the honest picture. And pretending otherwise helps nobody. That's not a personal failure. Wages, housing, and the cost of living have made saving genuinely harder than it was a generation ago. The rules of the game changed, and most people were never told. But the fix is always the same three things. Know your number, close the gap slowly, and never interrupt compounding once it starts working. That's it. There's no secret, no trick, and no shortcut worth taking. Whatever age bracket you landed in, the worst move is to look away because the number felt uncomfortable. Looking at it is how it starts changing. The people who get ahead are simply the ones who checked. This is general information only, not financial advice. Do your own research and speak to a licensed professional. If this helped, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.